Hi guys, welcome to another video in this channel. I'm really angry and sad because I've been trying to record a really cool project for you guys for the last couple of hours, and every time I get to a certain point, it crashes and I have to start over again. And I've lost a lot of time, and that makes me really sad. But I think it's a really cool project, so we're gonna go to it. Hopefully you guys like it. So let me know in the comments if all of this effort was worth it, because otherwise, such a sad way to start the day trying to record something that just doesn't want to be recorded. Anyway, before we jump into the actual project, I just want to remind you guys that we have our portfolio review this upcoming weekend. The submissions are open. You're going to find the link down here in the description if you want me to review your portfolio, any piece you're working on. If you just want to share something so that we can see it here in the channel, make sure to leave a your little document with your link down here on the Google Drive folder, and I'll be happy to take a look at it. Other than that, I just want to remind you guys that we do have our Skillshare option available. So if you want to try Skillshare and watch any of our courses completely for free for some days, you can check out the description down here. It's a promo that we have running where you can access pretty much every course, my courses, the other instructor courses. All of the courses are going to be available down here in Skillshare. I'm not going to run the promo today, don't worry. So let's just jump onto the project. So yesterday the NANITE thing got me quite inspired, and I thought it would be a good idea to show you how texturing works on a different level. What do I mean by this? Well, NANITE is really powerful, and we can do a lot of very cool things with it. But unfortunately, it breaks down when we're trying to do a super big object, right? So if we're doing like a mountain or something like that, it becomes a little bit difficult to texture something so big with just a 4K texture, because even if it's like super detailed on the high poly thing, thanks to NANITE, the texture is gonna look super pixelated because it's a huge area to cover. So I was looking at this sort of like Mount Rushmore kind of things, and I found this one right here. I don't know who did this. It was definitely a BFX student, or is it like from Alien? I think it's from Alien, actually. Alien Covenant. It's this right there. And I thought it was very cool idea to have like a mountain with a face similar to Mount Rushmore, and I have this character right here. I was sculpting the character. I actually sculpted a really cool like mountain range with the head and everything, but it just didn't work. So we're gonna have to thank ZBrush for that one. So I'm gonna be. I don't want to say I'm gonna rush this, but I'm gonna go straight to the point with this one because again, I spent so much time and I still have other things to do and to keep working on. So yeah. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna grab the character. I'm actually gonna use my knife or select rect. I'm gonna grab the head of the character all the way to the shoulders, something like this. And this will be like a huge statue. Let's not say it's a mountain race, it's just a statue. What I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna go to subdivision levels. I'm gonna delete the lower subdivision levels. I'm gonna delete the hidden, and we're gonna increase the resolution here a little bit. Let's say 800 and Dynamesh, so that we don't lose any of the detail. As you can see, we get this. Now, one thing that I always mention is that the border that we normally get when dynameshing an open surface will generally have like things that we don't really want. So I'm going to soften that up or trim dynamic, whichever one works for you. It's perfectly fine. Make sure to give it like a couple of passes, to be honest, because again, a Dynamesh tends to do some weird stuff with those like super thin borders. So yeah, just be careful there. Cool. So now that we have this, again, as I mentioned, I actually had recorded this with like better stuff, like better sculpting and things like that. I'm gonna keep it really simple right now so we can focus on the cool stuff. So let's just go. I'm gonna go here to my light box, and I have my brushes. I have my orb brushes, and I have another couple of brushes from a guy named J-Ron that I got several years ago, and he has like this sort of like rock damage thing that we can use. So I'm gonna change this to a spray. I'm gonna lower the intensity and make the brush bigger, just to give it a, generally like stony texture everywhere. Detail is really important when working on big scale things, because the smaller the detail, the bigger the thing is gonna look. So if there's gonna be a statue, we definitely want to keep the details small. All of that like noise and stuff needs to be kept small. There we go. Now I'm gonna break symmetry. I'm gonna go back to my light boxes, and I have a couple of other like things that we can use. So for instance, this one right here, I'm probably gonna increase the intensity there on the element to get this sort of like jaggedy rock effect. Kind of looks like a carved stone again. I know it's supposed to be like a statue, but same thing, right? well, not same thing, but you get the point. The idea is to have a lot of like high poly, like silhouette changing things on our element that we can bring into Substance Painter and into Unreal eventually to generate this. So as you can see, it's kind of like this eroded, fragmented stone that goes around the character. Maybe they did polish things a little bit more here on the face, but we can still add like a little bit of damage here and there. Maybe decrease the intensity a little bit so we can add more of that stuff, but not like super intense. You can see this right here. There we go, like this. It's actually looking a little bit better than what I had before. The other one was like a mountain ridge. This is more like a, again, like a carved statue, so different sort of effect. Then we can go again to the light box, and this guy has some very cool like cracks. I'm really gonna increase the intensity here. And again, as I've mentioned, the size that we use for our stuff will really gives us an interesting perspective on how big or small something is. So if we do small cracks, this is gonna look a little bit bigger than like a statue or something. And finally, we can go for just a like a general noise. So I have this noise right here, just like dots and stuff, like little like concrete detail. We can also add a lot of this detail with what's the word, with texture, right? But again, since we're going to be using NANITE, being able to have this on the silhouette, like all of these changes in the silhouette, I think it's really good. So there we go. We have the high poly ready, right? And the issue I was having is I was trying to get a UV from this thing, and it was just like breaking and creating a mess. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I need to fix the teeth here a little bit. I actually want to have all of the pieces in a single place. So I'm gonna go to Subtool, and with everything turned on, I'm just gonna say merge visible. And this is gonna create a new tool up here where everything is on the same element, which is fine. Now I'm gonna Dynamesh again. We were using something like 800, but I'm gonna keep the groups option turned on, and I'm gonna hit Dynamesh. This is really important because what I want to make sure is that when we Dynamesh, each object remains its own stuff. However, to do that properly, we do need to go to polygroups, and we need to use other groups. So that each teeth and everything has its own group. So now we again go to like 800, we keep groups on, and we Dynamesh. And as you can see, that gives us a really high poly of like statue or a mountain or whatever you want to call it. And we have a lot of like changes in the silhouette. Things are looking good. And each teeth is its own thing. Now we need to bring this down to a low poly, because if we try to UV this thing, this is where ZBrush crashes, especially because we have a lot of stuff. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to duplicate this thing. And one of the duplicated copies, I'm going to C remesh. Just whatever we get. As long as it's close to what we're looking for, we should be fine. So C remesher right now should give us a C remesh version of the orc body and of the teeth and the eyes and everything. Let's see if it works. I'm going to pause real quick and pray to all of the gods. There we go. It actually worked. Okay, perfect. So we didn't have to pause. Now, the only problem with this is that, yes, the C remesher is working, but the problem is we lost a lot of detail. Now, if we take a look at this, this is almost at 500,000 points. So this one, I'm going to divide 1, 2, 3, so that it's close to that amount. Now, we turn on the other one, and we're going to project. So we're going to say project, all. And hit no poly. That's fine. So technically, what should happen now is all of the high poly from the Dynamesh version should be projected to the low poly version, which it seems that we have, because now we can jump to the lowest of division. This one we don't need anymore. And you can see that this is the lowest subdivision version. And if we push this up, we get here. And we can even give it one more subdivision level. That's fine. We did get some issues on the eyes, as you can see right there. That's fine as well. And since this is stone or a statue, we can just like smooth this out. There we go. And to make sure that we're utilizing as much of the properties here as possible, we can again go to like this J-Ron damage, for instance. Let's go spray, and let's like lower the intensity quite a bit. No, that one's not looking as nice. Let's go for like this rock damage. Change this to spray again. There we go. So we get you know, general noise on our, this is almost 6 million polygons, which is quite a bit, but it sure works just fine. That's one of the things that I don't like about the zero meshing process. It softens up a lot of things. So let's go back to drag rect, for instance, and we can again use this to really bring in the sharpness on the rocks that we had before, because we don't want this thing to look like a meatball or like chewing gum. We want it to be like hard and nice, like stones, right? We can even increase the intensity here. There we go. That's the kind of stuff that I want, like high poly, like jaggedy, like a high poly jaggedy effect that really makes it look like stone. Let's change it a bit with another one. Let's use like this one right here. It's important that we mix things around. You don't want to always use the same sort of detail or alpha, because as you can imagine, it becomes quite predictable, right? Or it's very obvious that we're using the same alpha. So there we go. That looks, I would say, okay, especially if it's gonna be like a mountain there in the background with like fog and stuff like that. I think it looks fine. Now, why was this important? Because now we can go all the way back to the first level, which is this one right here. And technically, if we were to go C plugin, UV master, no symmetry, keep the polygroups, and hit unwrap, it should be a lot easier for the UV master tool to work. And it seems like it did. Let's go to UV map and then let's do a morph UV. There we go. So this is the method that I was mentioning yesterday on the NANITE video, where you have a clean low poly, like an organized low poly, and then you just subdivide this until you get a super amazing looking high poly, and you can work with this. Now, here's where the fun part is gonna start. I'm gonna I need to bring things into substance, right? So I don't want to bring the lowest one, it's way too low. Let's bring this one right here. Or maybe this one right here, which is not like as low as you might expect, just so that we have a little bit more things to work with. I'm gonna export this. I'm gonna actually export this. Let's create a new folder on our stuff. So here, next to live assets, let's create a new folder, ogre. There we go. FBX, very important that we do this as FBX. It's gonna give us better results. We'll call this ogre. Let's just ogre, that's fine. Yeah, all of this is fine, and we just hit OK, perfect. Finally, or now we go to the highest subdivision level, which is 3.2 million polygons, quite a bit. I think I'm gonna be able to export this. Let's see how this works, because I really wanna utilize as much of NANITE as possible. So utilizing this thing right here will be the best way to do it. Let's save this, export. It's gonna take a little bit longer to export. Oh, seems like it didn't take that long. Oh, it is, it's writing the data. It's gonna take a little bit longer to export, but we're gonna be able to get, hopefully, a more interesting result inside of Unreal Engine. So now what we're gonna do, and I'm not gonna have time. I wasn't gonna have time, but after the crashes, it's not gonna be possible. I apologize for that. We're gonna do that in another day. Right now, I just want to focus on the texturing process inside of a substance to create or to texture an object that's really big. Okay. So let's just wait for this to finish writing the data. Meanwhile, I can start opening a substance. So how are you guys doing? Again, not the best start for me. It's early Monday right now for me as I'm recording this. As you guys know, I tend to record things one day prior, because we are really far apart in time zones. You guys are almost like a half a day, like a complete half day forward. We're gonna create a new one right here. We're gonna select assets. We're gonna go to the ogre. We're gonna grab our low poly, because again, substance cannot, it will be very difficult for substance to handle the high poly. There we go. That's the ogre low poly. And we are gonna do a bake, even though we're not gonna be using the normal map for texturing purposes, for the cavity and all that stuff. It is a good idea to have a bake. We're gonna grab this one right here. It's not that heavy, so it should work. Let's see if it does. It's definitely a lot. Like, I don't usually go this high. Another thing you could do is you could also decimate the high poly to make this process a little bit better. But as you can see, in this case, it works. The texture is not as like stretched out as what we had yesterday with the stone, so the UVs is working a little bit better. That's great. And there we go. Perfect. So that's it. We have the basis for the like construction or the buildup of our textures. I'm gonna go back into servers real quick. I'm gonna save this right here as Ogre. And I'm gonna close ZBrush to free up some space. Hope I hope that we don't need it. And now let's build this up. So we can use the traditional method that we used yesterday, which is we just grab a texture and we have 14 maps and we just like move it. But again, if this is going to be a huge mounting, imagine this is going to be again like huge mount. So if I were to bring this crumbling rock, which is a really good effect, right? Like it looks very nice. But if we get close with the character, we're gonna see this. Like imagine the character climbing these steps right here. It would look super horrible. And some of you might be like, well, we can up the tiling, right? Like we can go 4K. Yes, we can go 4K, but still, it doesn't matter how high you bring the tiling. The texture might look a little bit better from afar. Like this looks, I would say, quite nice. But the problem is, even if we were to change this to tray planar projection, which is another one of the things that we would do, when you get close, if the character is going to be walking close to this or near this thing, it's not going to look as nice. It's going to look pixelated. And the question is there a way to change that? And the answer is yes. We can use a tileable texture, not a tiling material, to do that. So what we need to do is we need to jump onto the shader settings, and I'm going to change the ASM metal roughness to this thing called the Pbr Material Layering. And the way this works, opposed to the other one is, or to the traditional layer system, is that instead of using or painting and creating over things, we create layers, and we can actually paint and create very interesting things in those layers, but we create layers. So you can see here we have material 1. So if I bring this thing into the material 1 slot right there, you can see that now what we can do, right now it still looks bad, but if we were to change the material coordinates here, we can increase this a lot. We can say like, hey, you know what, we want to tile this 20 times. And look at this. Now when the character is walking through this area, he's actually going to see a lot more resolution. And we can go even higher. We can say, hey, you know what, we want like 80. And look at the amount of resolution that we get, because what we're doing is we're tiling this texture throughout the whole surface, okay? So the only problem with this is that we won't be able to export this specific things into, like we won't export textures. What we're going to do is we're going to export masks. So the whole material setup, I'm going to show you in a different video, because we're not going to have time to do that on this one. But yeah, as you can see, we have this right here. And now the amount of detail that we get for the whole stone looks really cool. I'm gonna one of the well, not one of the problems, one of the things is we can go here to the layer, and in the layer, as you can see, it's not giving us the options to change the materials, because again, we're not going to be exporting materials. We're going to be exporting the masks, okay? So let's set up our first mask. And I like this one. I think this one looks interesting. Ogres and orcs, they like traditionally, especially thanks to World of Warcraft, they tend to be in this like sandy, like canyon places. So I think a brown rock is fine. Now, what else would we find in here? Probably sand, right? Like we would expect to find some sand. So if I look for sand, you can see that I have this fine windswept beach sand right here. So what I can do is I can go again to the materials here, go to my material number 2, and drop the sand on top of this thing right here. And the sand is going to be the new material that we have. And if we go to the layers, to mask here, and we paint, you can see that we can paint where the sand's going to be, okay? We've done this before. I think I remember doing this for the lighthouse project. So what we can do here again, if we mask out this this first channel, or if we go to this one, no, it's actually this one, we can go to the layers and say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna add a fill layer. I'm gonna add a black mask on this layer, and then I'm gonna add a generator, and it's gonna be like a dirt generator. So what's gonna happen now is, thanks to this dirt generator, if I think we need to invert this, we should be able, the fill layer is gonna be white. There we go. So with this generator, as you can see, we've now filled with sand all of these parts of the character. We can't really blend, because again, we're not going to be blending. We're going to be doing the material setup and the tweaking of colors and things like that on Substance, or not Substance, on Unreal, not here. But as you can see, we can already add this sort of like a visual interest to all of these places. So the only thing I need to be worried about here is the quality of this material. So if I go to the shader settings here, and I go to this guy, I can increase the intensity or the size of the sand. so that it looks like it's actually like going to the amount of things that we want. Let's add another channel. Let's add like a moth channel. I think we had like a moth. Yeah, this uneven moth. So again, if we were to go to this guy right here, we go to material 3, and we can add a moth channel right here. And now the mask that we need to paint is this one, because when we remove some of the mask 2, as you can see, that's where we're gonna see the moth. And again, we can imagine like where we would expect to see some of this moth. Maybe it's like on the underside of things. Well, we can just add another fill layer, white, and then add a black mask. And if we go to the mask, to the smart masks here, there's gonna be one that's I think there's one called the moth or rust from grounder. That's one right here. So we're gonna add it right there. And as you can see, we're gonna have moth on the underside of the element. I know it's a little bit difficult to visualize right now because of the colors, and I wish we could change the colors. I think there has to be a way though, right? I'm not sure if there's a way. I don't think so, unfortunately, because we're just using this as a preview thing. So eventually this mod would be like more intense or less intense. But the cool thing is all of these things right here, like this mask editor, for instance, we can go here, and if we increase a little bit of the global balance, you can see that this mod is going to be rising a little bit more. We're going to have more effect right here. Now, again, we take a look at the actual texture, and I can already see the pixels here. So we need to go here, and I know that this guy is going to be tiled way more times. Let's try something like 20 times. So we're going to tile that specific material 20 times to get this sort of like a mod effect on the whole mountain. And finally, let's add maybe a little bit of moss, right? I know that in the desert it wouldn't be like super like obvious to have moss, but we can go to material 4, and we add this one right here, and then we're gonna go to the mask 3, and again, if we start like showing some of this, hey, I did not add, sorry. Let's go here, let's go moss, there we go, I have this meadow moss. We add it on top. Now if we go to the last mask, which is mask 3, and we paint, as you can see, we're gonna have the moss. And again, we will have to go to this guy right here, increase the coordinates so that the size of the moss matches the size of the other things, all of the other things, and we can play around. We can say, hey, you know what? We want to have a lot of moss, and then we're gonna do a black mask, and we're gonna have a generator, and we're gonna have, let's say, a light generator. So there's gonna be moss on the upper parts of the mountain. And we can move this thing right here. We can increase the highlight glossiness or the highlight level, have more or less moss on these areas. Look at that. Beautiful. That looks really nice, right? Have these patches of moss that are looking quite nice on top of certain areas of the element. And then to break these things up a little bit, we could go and add another, say, like a fill layer. And on this fill layer, there is it's barking, I don't know why. In this fill layer, we can use this thing. Now this one we can definitely tile a little bit more. Let's increase the contrast, the balance. This is all like procedurally generated textures. And we can multiply this against the dirt. And that way, as you can see, that clouds is gonna help me break up some of the moss that we have in certain areas. It's gonna keep it a little bit more subtle. So we're gonna have a little bit of green here and there, but it's not gonna be as obvious. Can even increase this. I think I really want like high contrast here, so that where we have the moss, we really see like patches of moss. And that's it. So this is what we would do to texture a big area. So now the character, if I'm playing like I don't know, like a Zelda game or something, and I'm exploring on top of this guy, the character would be running here, and you see the texture, and yes, it looks a little bit less quality than the rest of the things, right? But it's not gonna be like super pixelated like what you sometimes see. This is a technique that we use. And now the final question might be like, well, perfect, this looks nice, but how do we export this so that we can use this? And we are going to be exporting the file. So if I go here to export textures, let's export to the Ogre one. There we go. And here, we're just going to keep this one, documents, channels, plus normal, plus AO. That's what we want. And when we export, what's going to happen is we are going to have different masks and different elements for each specific element. So if we open the output directory, you can see that we have the mix AO. So we have an ambient occlusion map here. Very important, because we can use this to add a little bit more depth to the element. And we have the blending mask. So for instance, this is the original blending mask. This is where I think the sand is, or sorry, the dirt's gonna be. I think it is the sand. And then this one right here would be the I'm not sure what that one looks like, an ambient occlusion. Yeah. So this one right here, this is the moth, right? Because it's on the lower portions of the element. And finally, this one right here, this is the moss. Okay. So those 3 masks, 1, 2, and 3, those are the actual masks that we're gonna be using on our nanite mesh so that we get all of the detail. So I'm gonna stop the video right here, guys, and let me know in the comments if you like this so far, because I do think it's looking quite nice. And we're gonna continue with this. We're gonna continue. I want to bring this into Unreal, maybe add a couple of trees here and there, and let's see if we can get a nice composition going. Let me know if you like this, and thank you very much. Make sure to leave a like, share, subscribe. Don't forget about the portfolio. It's your chance. Go down here and submit something. And that's it, guys. Have a great day. I'll see you back tomorrow.